What's up, YouTube? This has been probably my most requested video because, as is readily apparent by my channel statistics, my most watched video is my tutorial on shot tracing with just Premiere Pro. In this video, I'm going to show how I do it in a more professional looking way using both Premiere Pro and After Effects. It makes a more uniform line, it makes a smoother animation, and it actually simulates depth and distance with the taper effect. So I'm going to do 3 examples the same way I did in the previous tutorial using just Premiere Pro. A really short shot where you can see the ball the whole time just to demonstrate the mechanics, how After Effects works, and then a driver shot, and then I'm going to do an iron shot. I'll say it more again in the video, but this isn't perfect. It's just a lot better than the shot tracing apps, especially in the first half of the swing. It'll definitely follow the golf ball all the way through. So when you watch, you're going to think that's kind of tedious, but just like anything, it comes with practice. I can typically do a whole 9-hour vlog in probably just a little over an hour. At first, you know, there's a learning curve to it. It takes some time. So we're going to jump straight into it. So we're going to jump straight into Premiere Pro first here, just to show kind of my process, how I do this. Now, when I edit course vlogs, I film everything on my GoPro, every single shot, and then I put all the videos, I import them straight into Premiere Pro, and then I cut them down. The first thing I do is go through without putting any scores, any effects, anything like that, and I just cut them down to where it's basically ready to be edited. So as you can see, these shots are they're pre-cut, more or less. And so this is a little bunker shot I thought would be perfect just to demonstrate how I shot trace, you know, because you can see the ball the entire time, and it's a good way to demonstrate the mechanics of After Effects. I'm going to start off by saying I have a fairly good understanding of both Premiere Pro and After Effects and the whole Adobe Creative Suite, but I'm definitely not an expert. The things I've done are probably ways I've taught myself. Someone watching this may have a better understanding about the algorithms and like the complexity of just like the taper numbers. There's a lot of things I'll get into as we go. If you see me doing anything that's, you know, off base, a little off color, just let me know, because I mean, I'm happy to learn, but you know, this is the way I do it. We're going to start off with this bunker shot. As you can see the ball up. You can see the ball the entire way. Now, obviously, in a real course vlog, if you watch my course vlogs, I'm not going to trace this. You can see it. Again, I want to demonstrate the mechanics. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the shot we want, and not dissimilar to the previous video, I'm going to find the frame just before impact position. Now see, I'm scrolling frame by frame on Premiere Pro by using the scroll wheel on my mouse. So here's impact. I want the frame just before it, just like that. So I'm going to go down here on my timeline, and I'm going to use my razor tool. I call it the cut tool. If you're using Windows, you pull up the razor tool by pushing C. Looks just like that. Or you can just go over here and click the razor tool. So like I said, the point just before impact, I'm going to cut that. If you're wondering why this clip is setting out like this, I only did that for this video tutorial so I could see the ones I wanted to use for examples. There's no reason it has to be out like that. We're going to clip it right here at this frame, and then you're going to wait till the end of it. Now, so what you're doing is you're going to cut you're cutting the clip that you're going to export into After Effects. There'll be a dynamic link. It'll actually be a live link. So as you edit it in After Effects, it'll actually change in Premiere Pro. I wouldn't recommend using this entire clip. I would definitely, even if you have to leave just a sliver like that, it's ideal, because if something happens and you don't want this entire animated clip or something different, it's as simple as pulling it back and then just stretching it out. And also, when you export this into After Effects, it pretty much permanently resizes it, because if you look, this is not the native size of this. I've actually scaled it up to 134% because it was originally like this, and I just felt like it needed to be a closer shot. There's no reason to have all this over here. You'll see when you export this into After Effects, it actually keeps your frame zoomed in just like this. It'll keep the scale at the same 134%. Lots of words, lots of information, but once you have isolated the clip you need, which is perfect, just like that, you're going to come down here. You're going to click this clip. When you see me making the timeline bigger and smaller, also, it's you hold Alt, and then I'm scrolling with my mouse wheel. All right, so we're going to right-click this, and I'm going to up here, and you'll see it says Replace with After Effects Composition. Now I have all my Adobe Creative Suite apps that I use pinned to my taskbar, so you'll see when I right click and I move over to replace with After Effects composition, After Effects will light up down here, which means it's created a dynamic link. It means this clip is also live in After Effects, and there it is. And like I said before, you moved it in After Effects, it actually saves your scale settings, so it's still 134% inside the frame. First thing we're going to do is we're going to go up here and we're going to get our pen tool, which in After Effects is a macro in Windows, you can access your pen tool by pushing G, or you can go right up here to your toolbar and just select pen tool. Another really convenient thing about After Effects, the way I'm zooming into the ball here is actually just hovering my cursor over top of the viewer window and just scrolling the mouse wheel. Now if you want to move inside the work area, you want to push the scroll wheel as a button, and you'll see me doing that a lot too. That helps a lot, especially with the kind of project we're doing. So I've got my pen tool, and if you watch my previous tutorial, it's pretty similar. We're going to select right in the dead center of this golf ball. Now it doesn't really matter if you want to put that at the very tip of the golf ball, at the very back of the golf ball. It doesn't matter as long as you remain consistent throughout the entire tracing. You'll see that when I clicked that, made that point, I got a shape layer that popped up over here in my composition window. So I'm going to open this, and you'll see it opens up a window here. And you want to open contents, and you're going to see shape. See now, the default setting for After Effects, which we might be able to change it, I don't know, but the default setting for After Effects when you start with the pen tool is a filled shape. As you'll see right down here, it says fill. What that means is it thinks you're trying to draw, and see as you finish these points, it's going to create a fill shape, but we don't want that. The first thing I'll do is I want to go here and click fill, and I'm going to delete it because we don't need it. And then we're going to open up stroke. We're going to use stroke a lot later, but right now the way I work is, and it's not entirely necessary if you like to work that way, but the next thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and make stroke. I'll click this little eye here, which means I can't actually see all these changes. So once you start animating your line, stroke is going to be all these settings you're going to mess with here. When you're messing with a small golf ball, it kind of makes it difficult to animate, in my opinion. Like I said, you can leave it, but I don't. So we're going to go ahead and make it to where stroke is not being able to see. Now, also sometimes you'll see if you've clicked off, if your point is a circle, a filled circle like that, that means it's deselected. So there's two ways you can pull that back up, because you know if you leave this deselected and then try to move the path on, you'll just create another shape, and I don't want to do that. So you can either go down here and select path, which re-highlights it for you, or you can actually just take the pen tool and just actually click it, and then once it turns square again, that means you're actually creating a path again. I find the easiest way is to advance the shot frame by frame and then actually trace the ball to the end. Now the default setting for After Effects is page up and page down over by the number pad, which was okay, except I like to use my right hand for the mouse, and I want to advance frames with my left hand. It's just ideal for the kind of animation I'm doing. So I actually macroed the advance one frame and go backwards one frame to the tilde and the 1 key over here, so it's easier accessible with my left hand and I can work a whole lot faster. We're going to move on down, and then we'll just start advancing frame by frame, and we're just going to follow the ball. So at that point I can see the ball pretty well, so I'm going to click and follow right to the middle of the ball, just like that. Now one really important thing, if it's not already default setting on your After Effects, up here you're going to see this setting called, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Roto Bezier. I have no idea. What this does is, when it's selected, it automatically creates as uniform a curve as it can between 2 points. So as long as you animate pretty closely, it'll actually keep a curved line for you, which is another huge advantage it has over my previous tutorial method of tracing shots, because I could make fairly decent looking curved lines there, but you had to follow the ball really, really closely because it did have a tool that automatically curved the path for you. So in short, just make sure Roto Bezier, probably butchering that word, has been selected, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. So like I said, we're going to just animate this path. We're going to just draw this path all the way up. And you can skip a lot of frames when you're just drawing the path, because the After Effects kind of does a lot of work for you. See, that line still looks pretty good. I would not recommend making extreme changes. I'll do like an extreme example. See, obviously that ball, it's a traveling golf ball. It took a pretty sharp turn up at the top. Obviously you can't click at that point because it's not going to be the shape that you're looking for. The more points you use, I mean, you can use for every frame if you want. The more points that you use on the line, the more accurate it's going to be in most cases. So we're just going just like that. And you can see that line actually changes every time I make a point. And once you get to the final part, honestly, it's going to be fairly accurate. Not enough to even for an average YouTube viewer to notice that. If you just click all the way to the bottom, it'll be fine. I usually get pretty obsessive. You know, I'm always looking for it to be perfect. I feel like everyone's going to notice. I want it to be like follow the absolute perfect flight of the ball. I'll always put more points than is necessarily needed for the down spot, because when it's a fairly, like, you know, from this top line down to here, it's a pretty straight line. I mean, it should be able to figure it out. But like I said, the more points you put, the more accurate it can be. Now, with all that being said, even with this Roto Bezier tool, when you zoom in really close, you'll see that sometimes it's not exactly perfect. Like right there, you can see that's a ball's not going to travel like that in real life. So you can always move these points, and you just have to eyeball it a little bit, and you can see it's pretty accurate right there, and it looks a lot better. We've already drawn our path, which is the next step in this process. At this point is when I go down right over here, and I want to click this eye back because I want to be able to see my stroke again, because it's okay to see it now. It won't be in my way. You'll want to pick your color. Just for the sake of this vlog, I'll pick red because it's something easy to see. And then I always typically keep my stroke width, since I've started using this method, between like 16, 35. It depends on how far away the shot is and everything. With this shot, I feel like 18 is about right, because it's about the size of the ball coming out of the bunker. Some of this stuff I'm telling you is just personal preference. The directions will pretty much remain the same, but everything I'm gonna tell you now is just aesthetics, how I like things to look. Because like down here, butt cap, which is the way the line looks. So you can see the end of it is square. I obviously feel like a round cap is a lot better because golf balls are round and it just looks better when it's being animated. As I said, I'm not an expert. I'm not even really sure what miter joint is. Alright, so now as you're moving down the stroke menu, you're going to see the next thing. Now this is taper, and I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate what taper is used for. It's not really necessary for a short shot like this, because what it does is, as the line travels, it becomes smaller, and it simulates depth or distance, which looks really good if you're trying to make really professional looking course vlogs, because, you know, obviously the ball's going to get smaller and it just looks better. My previous method, I didn't have that option, so it was just one uniformly sized line, no matter if it was a 300-yard drive or a 60-yard pitch shot. As far as exactly what these numbers mean and how they affect everything, I'm not an expert. I'm not really well versed on it. All I know is I've messed with it enough to where I've figured out what looks good. I always do. The only two I mess with in the taper section is end length and end width. So end length is almost always 75%, and see, when I changed that, it made the end of the line really small. So then end width is what kind of fixes that. And for a shot this close, like I said, this spot, end width usually always ends up being between 25 and 35%. So if I push 30, that's about right. It has a decent little size to it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. See, at impact right here, the line is about the same size as the ball. But as it moves further away, you can actually see it there. This line's obviously thinner because it's further away from this line. So I'm done with that. I like to keep an organized workspace when I'm in After Effects. The next thing I'll do, I will click stroke. That cleans up my workspace for a second, because this is pretty much the big secret. It's not even a secret. This is the biggest thing about doing a pro tracer line, or whatever you want to call it, in After Effects. I'm going to go over to my composition tab. I'm not sure what this is called. I'm gonna go over here to where we're working with our path and stroke, and I'm gonna click add. And it's gonna come up and we're gonna select trim paths. Trim path is a tool that's used to animate this line. Now this could end up being the most tedious part of it, but just like anything, it takes practice. Once you've done it a few times, you'll get better at it. Honestly, I can probably do an entire 9-hole vlog, just the tracing, probably in a little over an hour, because I've gotten so good at this. Now the first time you do it, it might take some time because you're going to mess up, you're going to have to go back and look, but you'll learn how to do it and you'll get there. You'll see once you open trim paths, you get down here and end is at 100%. Now, as you can see, when I put that to 0, the line disappears. So that's what this is. So at 50%. So you'll find when you're trying to animate that a percentage doesn't move the line near as much in the beginning as it does in the end. And I know that might sound confusing, but you'll see as I work through here. As I said, we're going to animate this line. I'm going to go back to the start of my clip. Right over here, you're going to see this time vary stopwatch, which when activated will bring up keyframes, which if you use any kind of animating software or anything in Adobe you're familiar with, it's the animation of the line. So I'm going to go ahead and click that while I'm at the start. I'm going to make sure I'm going to repeat it again. I'm going to go back to the start of my clip and then click and bring up this keyframe. The beginning keyframe should always be 0 on end. 0. 0, stupid thing. Not completely dissimilar to the way we started. We're going to move this ball piece by piece by advancing our frame with page up or page down, frame by frame, and start this animation. So as you can see, I'm advancing my frame. I can see the ball now. I'm gonna move this line right up to the center of that golf ball the best I can. And then I'm gonna advance a frame and I can see it there. This is basically how this is done. I know you're watching and you're thinking, wow, that is gonna take a long time. It kinda does. But once you get used to it, it's much easier than you think. One of the big tricks with this is, especially when the ball's traveling at the fastest at the very beginning of the swing, you want to make sure you animate that as closely and as perfectly as you can, because that's what makes it look really nice. At the very beginning of the swing, when the ball is traveling at one of its fastest rates, especially according to the camera, you know, it's closest to the camera at that time, it's going to travel very fast away from the camera. You want to make sure that your trim path is as close to the ball perfectly and as many frames as possible. You want to use as many frames as you can, because you can cheat. Like, I can advance this ball well to the top of the swing, and I can move my path, trim path, all the way up to it. And you can see down here in these keyframes, you know, it's animated, which means it's going to mathematically animate that line from this point to this point uniformly, which if the ball was traveling at the exact same speed the entire time, it would look just fine. But I'll show you here. You can see the beginning of the swing. So it was maybe a little difficult to see in real time, but once I slow it down, you'll see. So the ball, see how this path is trying to keep up with the ball, but the speed's so variable it can't. So now it's sped up and it'll catch. And you can understand, for a whole thing, for an entire arc of a ball's path, it won't look right. So that's why definitely at the beginning, I'll go ahead and delete this keyframe. Definitely at the beginning, you want to follow this ball as closely as possible, at least till, I mean, if I had to guess, this is just my method. If I had to guess, I would probably say I usually go about 2/3 of the ascent, because there's definitely going to be some cheating involved once you get used to it. So you see, the further I get, you know, I'll jump 2 or 3 frames just to give myself a break here. So at this point, it's probably where I might cheat up a few frames. But the most important thing to do, if you are going to animate this trim path and you want to move many frames just like that, so you can do that. But if you see me doing it you'll see me go up. And then down here, there'll be a large gap in these keyframes. I always go back through them and watch it just to see how far off it was. And typically if you start around 2/3 of the way in, just correcting it, you can see, I'm trying not to be confusing. Like I said, I cheated ahead and there's this big gap here. I just made sure I looked in between all these keyframes to see what the ball was doing. As you can see, it got away from the line a little bit, so like I said, I moved a little bit in. We'll turn it up to... And then we'll just keep watching it, and then, you know, if I could nitpick and probably try to make it perfect. Try to get it in exactly the center of the ball. So that looks really good. Definitely when you get to the top of the swing arc, the ball obviously is gonna be going really fast, slow down, and then start speeding up again. I recommend definitely using a lot of keyframes at the top of the swing. Anytime there's a big speed change, which in a golf swing, the golf ball is always going to be at the high arc of it. So right there. Now this is a thing I said I was going to bring up later. These trim paths, they're labeled by percentage. There's something I don't fully understand, because once you get closer to the end of this swing, it is just a percent moves a lot further than it did at the beginning. So like, you can try to hold your mouse over the percentage here like I am and move it forward, but it's just so much more touchy. So I'm doing fairly well right there. And it just takes practice. You'll see me, because I'm not really pointing it out, but you'll see me like right now. That's not perfectly in the center of the ball, so you'll see me go down here and I'll just type a number. And it's just practice. I got to where I don't know necessarily, but I can guess pretty much what number that is. It's like it gets to here, I can either try to scroll, and then it won't be perfect, even though that kind of was. And you just like this. And then that's the bottom of the swing right there. So that's the point you want to be at 100%. That's the gist of the hardest part of the shot tracing right there. So I'll just watch it to see what it looks like. I'll put this on half so I can actually render it. Up. And it'll be slow the first time it renders, because it's running just off the RAM. And right there, you can see that's pretty well traced. Now, the rest of the changes you do here, they'll be just aesthetic changes. Me, for example, I always go down to my transform panel for all my shot tracing. I like there to be some opacity, and I like the same amount of opacity, but with every color, honestly, it's different. With red, I feel like 60% would look good, and that might have been too much, so we'll say 70%. So, you know, you can look. I just like to be able to see through the line just a little bit. And then there's lots of things you can do to add a little attitude to the lines, I guess. One thing I always do, once I've got all this done, I'll go here to my shape layer. I'll right click it. Then I'm gonna go to layer styles. And then you have all kinds of things you can do, you can play with. The one I use definitely every time will be Bevel and Emboss. When you activate Bevel and Emboss, it kind of gives a little protruding look. You can see, like, I think that's too much, so I'll go down here and I'll open Bevel and Emboss. I'll take a look at it, and you have a lot of options here. There's depth, there's size. So depth, you can see, kind of moves it, makes it a little sharper. I think it was at 100%. I think it looks a little bit better, probably closer to 70. And then you have size, which with a line this small, it causes more trouble than, see, once I go up to a certain point, it just gets rid of it altogether. So I think 6 was about the right size, 5, whatever. You can add like an outer glow. I think I've done that before. I wasn't a big fan, but I almost always add a drop shadow. And pretty much the default setting looks good. It just kind of helps the line pop a little bit, helps people see it a little bit better. But so that's the mechanics of it. That's how things usually work, and I think that looks pretty good. So right there, that's the basics of shot tracing. That wraps up the first video of my series of how to trace shots in After Effects and Premiere Pro. Originally, I was gonna make it one long video. If I left it that way, it would have been a really long video. And also from what I've understood about YouTube's algorithm, it would probably get seen by more people if it were 2 or 3 separate videos. From the looks of it right now, it's probably gonna be 3 videos. If you guys like this tutorial and there's something else that you might wanna see that I can make a tutorial about, just leave it in the comment sections. Let me know if there's any other questions you have about this video. Either way, thanks for watching and stay tuned for the next video.